Hello and welcome to Bastion Entertainment. If this is your first time checking out the channel, this is part 4 of covering Game Maker Basics, where we're adding simple mechanics to our simple game idea. If this type of content interests you, please subscribe so you can follow along. Today we'll be adding a 4-directional enemy sprite to our game and making sure that it has an attack animation in all 4 directions. We'll also be adding just a pinch of juice so that the player blinks red when contact is made with the enemy attack. Once this happens, the game will restart and the player character will begin in its initial state. In one of our recent videos, we talked about iteration as we were struggling with the animation for our enemy design. Just like we've talked about in the past, we decided to simplify our art and prioritize getting the game working in GameMaker. This in turn led us to simplify our enemy design, being inspired by pixel art of the 80s and 90s and the constraints of the time. We kept the animation the same for our idle sprite and all the walking animations. We ensured that the origin point was set to the center of the drop shadow for each of the sprites. Next, it was time to ensure that our enemy had a 4-directional attack. Using GameMaker's sprite editor, we created a series of simple attack animations using a combination of the circle brush and the eraser tool. Once you complete these steps, it'll be time to add some GML to the project. Create a new object and name it obj_enemy. Add the idle sprite of the enemy to this object. Below your new object, you'll see a tab called Variable Definitions. Create a new variable and call it path_to_follow. In the default, type noon or none. Set the type to expression. This will be important later when we add our enemies to the room and create a path layer for them to follow. With obj_enemy selected, add a create event. We've recently created a Patreon so that viewers can enjoy our GameMaker tutorials more easily. Our Patreon is completely free and you'll find the link in the description below. All the GameMaker language code will be available there, including the code from parts 1 through 3 of this playlist. Add these 3 lines to your create event. This will set up the speed for your enemy and check to see if he's close enough to the player object to attack or not. It'll also ensure that it follows the path that we set up in the room. Next, you'll need to create a step event for your object. In the step event, add these lines. This code checks to see which sprite to use depending on which direction the enemy is facing and whether or not it is attacking the player character. Up next is the end step event. These lines of code will check to see if the enemy is attacking or not and set it back to the desired sprite for its walk animation. Lastly, we will need to add an animation end event. You can find this in the drop-down underneath the word Other. Add these lines of code that check to see if the player is attacking and if not, continues on its path. Create an object and call it obj_enemy_parent. You won't need a sprite for this object, but you will need to make sure that your object enemy is a child of this enemy parent. Now we're going to add a collision event to our object sprite player to ensure that collision is enabled when it comes in contact with the object enemy. Click Add Event and scroll down to Collision. Select the object obj_enemy. This code creates an alarm when collision is activated with the player character. It also creates a red blink effect before the character is destroyed. Next up, we'll create an alarm event that restarts the game when the instance is destroyed. Once you've added this single line of code, let's go into our room and create a path for the enemy to follow. Once you have your room workspace open, you'll notice this button that creates a new path layer. It kind of looks like the snake from the original Snake game. Once you've created this layer, you'll have to set a path to it. If you haven't created a path, click the button Create New and name your new path, Path 1. Now select the path layer that we've just created and open the editor. Use your mouse tool to create a simple rectangle shape and set it to Smooth Curve. With the instances layer selected, take your obj_enemy and drop it near the path that you created. Double-click the enemy object and open up the Variables tab. For its value, type path1, which is the path we just created. Go ahead and run your game, and you should have an enemy that follows the path and triggers the attack animation when you walk near. If you want to add multiple enemies to the game, create a new path, assign a new enemy object to that variable path. You can do this with as many enemies as you like to add to your room. Once again, thanks for checking us out. If you found this video helpful, please give it a like and subscribe. Until next time, happy coding, and if you're following along with the Game Maker Basics, please let us know in the comments below if you have any questions, or if you'd just like to share your results.